Hello, in this video, I'm going to demonstrate using Shopify's custom pixels, or sometimes called customer events, using that to integrate Google Tag Manager on the Shopify checkout. Now, I'm going to be very clear up front. The integration with Google Tag Manager, if you are integrating Google Tag Manager via custom pixels, you're going to run into severe limitations with Google Tag Manager. So this is really not a recommended way to implement Google Tag Manager on the rest of your site. So that's purchases and everything before checkout. But if you don't have Shopify Plus, so you can't add Google Tag Manager to the checkout.liquid, or if you're using Shopify's new one-page checkout that is going to become mandatory in August of 2024, you're going to have to integrate. This is the only way that you can integrate Google Tag Manager with the checkout pages. Okay, cool. So let's jump in. First, we have here, this is code to integrate Google Tag Manager with custom events. So to add this, you're going to go over to Settings, Custom Events, Customer Events here, and this is where you add custom pixels. You'll go add custom pixel like this. I already have one here, like so, and you're going to add your code here. The way that custom pixels works is, one, pixel access is sandboxed. What that means is it's not like adding JavaScript to your theme.liquid if you're used to that, or if you're used to other ways of adding code to your through apps and things like that to your Shopify store. The sandbox JavaScript means that it's really, really limited in what it can do. In particular, for Google Tag Manager, as we'll see in a second, preview mode doesn't work, which kind of defeats the whole point of Google Tag Manager generally. But as I said, if you have one-page checkouts, or you don't have access, or you don't have Shopify Plus, so you can't edit the checkout liquid, this is your only option for Google Tag Manager. Okay, cool. So the pixel access is sandboxed. And the way that it works is up here at the top, you load things that are going to preload into your pixel, right? So that is where I put the Google Tag Manager code, right? Now notice this Google Tag Manager, I've removed the script tags. That's because this isn't HTML, it's JavaScript. So that what that means is if you go over to your Google Tag Manager container and you click on Google Tag Manager, you see here, this is HTML. It's expecting this to be in the head of your page. All I want is this part, removing the script tags, just getting the pure JavaScript. I don't need to worry about the body tag at all. I just paste that in here like this. And good. Okay, cool. The other thing I need to do is I need to add this window.data layer. That just initializes the data layer. I need to do that before every event. The way that custom pixels work is that you do this analytics subscribe code here. What this does is it subscribes, it says, hey, Shopify is going to tell us when the checkout started. That's the way custom pixels work. And this analytics.subscribe says, I want you to listen to this checkout started event that Shopify is going to fire. And I want you to run all of the code in here every time the checkout started event fires, right? Now, a couple things to note here. Checkout started will fire every time they end up on this checkout page here, the beginning of the checkout page here. It's not strictly speaking a checkout started. Checkout started would really be if it fired once, right? So if you were using this for a begin checkout, it's going to be slightly different than you might expect, because if the user refreshes this page, the checkout started event is going to fire again, right? So that's something just to note. And then the other ones, there's a full list, we'll link to them, of the customer events that you can subscribe to. The relevant checkout ones are checkout started, checkout shipping info added, checkout contact info added, and checkout completed. For example here, I've just used the checkout, these two events, checkout started and checkout address info submitted. Okay. Cool. I've mapped these over to what they would be called in Google's Google Analytics 4 spec. Checkout started is called begin checkout. So that's why I made the event that we're pushing to the data layer here, begin checkout. And then I've included some of the standard parameters you might add. I haven't specifically formatted all of these in GA4. This is just a demo to get you started using the custom pixels with Google Tag Manager. You're going to have to customize this to put in the kinds of data that you're interested in the format that you're interested in. Okay, cool. So what happens here is when someone starts a checkout, Google or Shopify will fire a checkout started event that we are now subscribed to. It passes some data about that event. You can find that data over in the documentation over here. These are the things that are passed to it. Namely, it's this, the important bit is this checkout code here. So this is what the checkout event looks like, or checkout attribute looks like. These are the things that it has, right? And the way that we access them is we say event.data.checkout and give me the currency code, the email, the total price, the amount of the total price, the line items, et cetera, right? Okay, cool. So that's how custom pixels work. You can read more about how they work on the Shopify documentation for them. But I want to jump into some specific things that we want to do with Google Tag Manager. So read the documentation if you want to dig deep on how pixels, the custom pixels work. We're going to spend the rest of this video talking about how to integrate this with Google Tag Manager. So I've got Google Tag Manager here, right? I've got it loaded. I've got an event firing on the checkout started. I'm pushing that event to the data layer. The event's going to be called begin checkout. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So here's a checkout that I have, right? And the first thing that you would try to do if you were used to Google Tag Manager is you'd have a bunch of tags in Google Tag Manager and you'd say, hey, put it in preview mode and let's debug what's going on with begin checkout. So what you would do is take the checkout like this, right? And you would put it in preview mode, right? And you connect like this and you'd start debugging in Google Tag Manager preview mode. If you do that, you'll notice here that Google Tag Manager will tell you that your Tag Manager container is not installed, right? Why is that? That goes back to this. It's the sandboxed JavaScript. Shopify has decided to sandbox the JavaScript for these custom pixels, and Google Tag Manager preview mode does not work in sandboxed JavaScript. By the way, that is true also for the Shopify post-purchase page, which is down over here. So if you hit save here, right, and you go and you look at the checkout and scroll down, this post-purchase page, this is also sandboxed JavaScript, and Google Tag Manager preview mode won't work in that either. Back to customer pixels on the checkout. Okay, so what do we do? How do we debug? We really can't use Google Tag Manager to its fullest extent without preview mode working, right? Preview mode is really something that's very important to Google Tag Manager, right? So how can we get this to work? How can we debug what's going on, right? Well, here's our workaround for this. So if you notice in the custom pixels over here, right? If I go back to our custom pixels, right, and I open up Google Tag Manager here, right? And you want to make sure that it's connected. Cool. You'll see here, I added to this data layer push a fired from custom pixel tag, right? Or variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and this is the sort of secret sauce of how we can debug or use Google Tag Manager in this sandbox JavaScript, is I'm going to create a trigger that I'm going to say, hey, on any time a custom pixel fires, so that's where this fired from variable equals custom pixel, right? So I want to say equals custom pixel, like so, right? So I've got you, fired from equals custom pixel. I want you to log the full data layer, console.log the full data layer here, right? Okay, cool. And then I also need to create a variable for fired from. So I do fired from, it's just this data layer event here, fired from, like so, right? Just like that. So I create a data layer variable for fired from like that. And then what this is going to do is it's going to log everything in the data layer that comes from a custom pixel is going to log to the console.log. All right, that gets around the fact that we can't use Google Tag Manager in preview mode. So let's go ahead and close preview mode because we know that's not useful. We're going to go to our checkout, right click, inspect, and you're going to look at the console, right? So we're looking at the console.log here. Right, this is where this is going to be logged. So let's go ahead. Oh, the other thing you have to do is make sure, again, preview mode doesn't work. So you can't just put this in preview mode. You actually have to publish all changes in Google Tag Manager. They have to be live. So you won't be able to do your usual debugging thing where you go into Google Tag Manager, you put it in preview mode, you don't worry about any changes to production because it's not in production. Every change you make, you're going to have to test in production. That's just the downside of the way Shopify decided to do this. So let's call this like added custom pixel logging, like that. All right, and I publish my changes. Okay, once I do that, and once those changes are live, I can come to my checkout, open the console.log, and refresh like so. Okay, so I refresh the page. Great, cool. And we'll see here that the begin checkout event fired, right? So we can be sure, like we saw before in preview mode, it looked like Google Tag Manager wasn't installed. But now I can see Google Tag Manager is installed because this logs tag is firing. Log data layer tag is firing. That's working, right? So here it is. And in fact, I can log it and I can see what the event would be. The event is begin checkout, and it shows me what the content of the data layer is. So I've got the currency, the event, where it fired from, custom pixel, the line item, and the value here, right? That matches what we put in the data layer here. So now I can use this console.log to construct my pixels and tags and everything that I want to do in Google Tag Manager. I can be confident, reasonably confident as I can be in the name of those data layer events and variables, right? And I can go test those changes, submit it, and make my Google Tag Manager work, even though I can't use preview mode. One other little hack that I put in here is this event data that gets passed from Shopify in can be a little confusing. So it's nice to log that out as well while you're debugging. So that way you can see what the content of each event is. So you can see here, there's a bunch of stuff here, right? I've got context, data, right? Most of the time we're interested in data.checkout and these different things. I've got, my attributes here. If email was entered, I could add that, line items, etc. And as I fill this out, the events are going to continue to fire, right? So let's clear the log and I'll show you what I mean. So let's go add this. All right, continue to shipping. Cool. And you can see here, it fired an add shipping info, right? In this case, the data layer has been filled out. Now it has my email. The event was add shipping info. That's all coming from this subscription event here, right? Okay, cool. So that's how this works, right? The real secret sauce here is that whenever you're working with Google Tag Manager in custom pixels, preview mode won't work. In fact, it will tell you that Google Tag Manager is not installed. So the way that you work around that, the secret sauce, is to add this log here, right? Add this log data layer code to the Tag Manager container, publish that change, right? Probably start with just a completely empty container like this and just log stuff to the data layer and build out your data layer, your Google Tag Manager container, your tags and your variables using this logging that we have here. Also, log out the custom event to make it easier to push to the data layer what you need to push to the data layer. And that is really all we can do to make this work, to test Google Tag Manager and verify that everything is working before we go live. So that is all we can do. Hope you find this video useful. If you want to use Google Tag Manager with the rest of your store, check out our Google Tag Manager product at Slide Rule Analytics. We'll put a link down below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get more useful Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics for helpful videos. Thank you.